Week, we are going to be learning about Alma Thomas. She was an African American artist, and she is known for her abstract, expressionist paintings. She was also an art teacher, and I think art teachers are pretty awesome. So, what is abstract? Huh? Well, that means you won't see something that looks like a photograph or a picture. You will see shapes and forms and textures, and in all of Alma's works, lots of color. And there was another word, expressionist. That means to show emotions or feelings. As you look at her works, see if you can guess how she's feeling. Here are some pictures of Alma at work. Alma was born in 1891 in Georgia. That was 129 years ago. She was a creative child. She created puppets, sculptures, and plates. You might be wondering, why plates? Why mention that? Well, she used clay from the riverbed behind her home. This actually reminded me of when I was a child. I remember playing with mud to make like mud pies and clay behind my childhood home in West Virginia. I imagine many of you are finding some creative ways to play these days too. Maybe you can also relate to Alma in that way. She was good at math, science, and she really liked architecture or the structure of buildings. She moved to Washington, D.C. when she was 16 years old. She expressed an interest in architecture for a career, but that was an unusual profession for women at that time. She did go to college. She became a kindergarten teacher, and she enjoyed learning so much that she went to college for more education, and she decided to do that in the arts. She was one of the first African American artists to earn a degree. She got her master's in art education. So I think it's time to take a look at all of these fantastic works of art. This is a painting called Evening Glow. Alma did a lot of work in her home. I'm sure we all can relate to that right now. She worked in her kitchen and in a small living room. This work was inspired by the tree outside her living room. She liked the designs the leaves made when they pressed against the window. Then the light in the window would make shadows on the floor and walls inside her home. Have you ever noticed how the light changes in your home at different times of the day or in different types of weather? We've had some rainy days lately. Maybe your house hasn't seemed quite as bright. Can you see a shape? I see a lot of blue rectangles. Do you see those? This work is called Forsythia Glow in Washington, D.C. Remember, Washington, D.C. is where Alma was living. The photo on the right is of a forsythia bush. You may have seen them blooming in your neighborhood recently. I know I have. Can you see why she decided to use yellow? What about the other colors? What about her feelings or her expression in this work? What do you think? Do you see those rectangles again? I do. Here are two more of Alma's work. They look similar to me. Most of the time, Alma used acrylic paints, but she would also use watercolors. These two are watercolors. She loved to explore colors found in trees, flowers, gardens, and other things in nature. What feelings do you have when you look at her work? Do you see colors? Can you find some shapes? I see some dark lines. Do you? Here we have one of her works called Iris, Tulips, Jonquils, and Crocuses. In case you're not sure what all those words mean, Take a look at the right. They're flowers. I'm sure many of you have seen these flowers recently, even if you didn't know their names. Can you see the colors? Do you see the rectangles again? Alma would use faint, soft pencil lines to create the lines, shapes, and patterns in her works. Then she would paint over the lines. If you actually see some of her work in person, you can still see the pencil lines. She did not erase them. Maybe you will use some soft pencil lines in your work. How would it make you feel to keep those lines and not erase them? A question we often get asked is, what's your favorite season? I have to say, usually my answer is summer, but there's really nothing like fall or autumn. This work is called Autumn Leaves Fluttering in the Breeze. Take a look at the photos on the right. I took those photos in East Brunswick years ago when I used to teach at Chittick Elementary School. And this beautiful maple tree is right outside of the school. This was the fall or the autumn season, so the leaves were a beautiful variety of yellows, oranges, and there's still a little green left. And take a look, it's in front of a beautiful blue sky. I had to stop and take a picture. When I saw Alma's work, it reminded me of these photos. Her title helped me see her vision of the work. When you create your works, think of a title you can create to help tell the story. Not only was Alma inspired by our world, she was inspired by outer space too. Take a look. Here are some of the things that she had to say about the time she was living in. I was born at the end of the 19th century, horse and buggy days, and experienced the phenomenal changes of the 20th century machine and space age, Miss Thomas wrote about her work, which incorporated inspirations from Kandinsky to color television and from the flowers in her garden to the Apollo moon landings. When they say color television, that means she lived in a world where there was no TV, then it was black and white TV, and then it was color TV. That was a really big deal. Let's take a look at what else she had to say. Ms. Thomas was excited by humanity's efforts to constantly outdo itself. She wrote, "Today, not only can our great scientists send astronauts to and from the moon to photograph its surface and bring back samples of rocks and other materials, but through the medium of color television, all can actually see and experience the thrill of these adventures. These phenomena set my creativity in motion." Can you imagine how excited Alma would be by all the technology we are experiencing in our world? I am so grateful for technology because it's how I can connect with you. Let's take a look at some of her art inspired by space. This is called Mars dust. On the right is a photo of Mars, the planet, and the surface of Mars. Can you see why she named her work Mars dust? Do you see the colors? Do you see the shapes? And here we have Blast Off. I enjoy this piece. The title helps me understand the story and the emotion or the feeling. Do you see the shapes? See how the red rectangles help form another shape? Look at that triangle. How does this work make you feel? Did you know when astronauts come back from space, they can land in the ocean? Alma showed her interpretation of the Apollo 12 landing on Earth in her work called Apollo 12 Splashdown. There are photos of the real Apollo 12 on the right. Can you see the parachute in her work? Look in the top part of her painting. Do you see the darker rectangles? Looks like a parachute to me. And look at the bottom of her artwork. You see the blues? Looks like the ocean. But does it really look like the ocean? This must be that abstract part I was talking about before. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about how astronauts return from space, check out the More Resources page on my website. There's a video link to an astronaut talking about just that. Here is a photo of Alma's works displayed at the Studio Museum in Harlem in New York City. And here is a photo of Alma in front of one of her works. A fun fact about her national debut, that's where she gained her fame in the art world, it didn't happen until she was 81 years old. I hope you enjoyed learning about her and seeing how she expressed herself through art. I can't wait to see how she inspires you. Enjoy and stay creative.